So I'm looking at my watch and 45 minutes had passed already. We had only gone through maybe 3 or 5 tunes of the first set of a 3-set gig. It was a New Year's Eve gig, and the gig was 2 days away. That was one of the most frustrating rehearsals I've ever gone through, and one of the most disorganized ones. I don't know if you've had a similar situation. Well, in today's video, I want to talk about the steps you must take before going to rehearsal so that you could nail that rehearsal. Hi, I'm Donna Schwartz from DonnaSchwartzMusic.com, the site to bring your saxophone playing up to the next level. So it was a New Year's Eve gig. It was, 2 years ago or something like that. I got called to sub, and there was probably a list of maybe, 30 tunes, something to that effect. And it was a really busy time in my life, and I wasn't planning on playing any gigs during New Year's. I just wanted to kind of relax. But I said, all right, let me do this gig. So we have a rehearsal the week of the show. In fact, it was about 2 days before. And this is the first time everybody got together. And what I do, and going to be talking about these tips, but I'm super prepared whenever I go to rehearsal for any band. And so I was prepared. I had all my charts, whatever. Get there, people showing up late, and the keyboard player starts to say, just be patient with me. And I'm thinking, okay, I didn't know what he was talking about. And we start to rehearse the tunes, and we start to get to the first tune. He's like, okay, this keyboard player is asking the bass player what the chords are. And I'm thinking, huh? And then every 5 seconds we're stopping because he doesn't know the chords. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the rehearsal from hell. So long story short, that was a really torturous rehearsal. And I had to leave because I had somewhere else to go. And I had to leave before we even finished doing, the third set, or even the second set for that matter. Now I knew my stuff. And the 3 tips I'm going to share with you, again, the steps that you're going to take before you go to rehearsal will help you be prepared as well, so that when you go to rehearsal, you hopefully won't have that same experience as me. What brought all this on was a conversation I had with a fellow musician at a gig recently, and we were talking about the difference between rehearsing versus practicing. You see, at that rehearsal that I went to, that keyboard player was practicing. He wasn't rehearsing. When you're going to a rehearsal, you have to be prepared. When you're going to a practice, and maybe you're an original band and you're going to work on a new tune. So you're going to work things out there. When you go to rehearsal, it's not that you're working things out. You're figuring out who's soloing when, how to begin and end the tune, and just tweaking some things. And that's a huge difference. And that also is a difference between a professional band and an amateur band. Okay, so the 3 steps you must take before you go to a rehearsal. The first step, get recordings of the tunes. Now again, if you're working in an originals band, hopefully the person that wrote the tune has a demo. If not, they may have a lead sheet. Get something. If not, it's just going to make it that much harder, obviously. But if you get the recordings of the tunes, you'll have an opportunity to chart out the form, to know possible places, if there's no horn parts, for example, possible places where you can insert some horn stuff going on there. It's really important to know what to expect and know what the tunes are beforehand. Now, the second tip goes in line with that. You have to get the right key you're going to be playing it in. I know for a recent gig, we were doing a popular tune. It was the Ed Sheeran tune. What was it? Oh gosh, Shape of You. Okay, we were doing that tune, but we weren't doing it in the original key. And luckily, he told us before we went to rehearsal, I'm going to be doing it in a higher key, and he sent a recording of the tune in a higher key. Sometimes you don't get that luxury. A lot of times singers do change the key of the tune, and you usually don't find out, unfortunately, until you're at rehearsal. So how do you deal with that? Well, you have to work on your ears. You have to be able to, if they don't tell you the key, you got to pretty much figure it out. Okay, you're listening to the bass parts, you're listening to the quality of the chords, that kind of thing. But if they do tell you the key and they're telling it to you at rehearsal, if you worked it out in the old key, this is where transposition skills certainly help. if you're reading a chart. If not, transposition can also mean through doing it by ear as well, knowing the relationships of the chords and the notes to each other. All right, so again, get recordings of the tunes, chart out the form, all that kind of thing. Number 2, get the key you're going to be performing it in, and ideally before the rehearsal. All right, just as an aside, a lot of times professional bands, they'll have one rehearsal, maybe not even any rehearsal before the gig. So just something to keep in mind. The more prepared you are on your own, the more practicing you do at home as opposed to at the rehearsal, the more success that you're going to have. The third tip is to chart your part. Okay, and I kind of alluded to that before. Chart out what you need to do. Okay, you don't need to use finale or Sibelius or anything like that. You could just use notes, just write out notes for yourself. That's perfectly fine. But be organized. Have a good idea of what you're going to be playing. Now, as a horn player, a lot of the tunes that I've been playing on lately don't have horn parts. So I have to listen to the tune, think about the form, and think to myself, okay, where would a good spot be to put the horn? Or is it just open for me for soloing in the middle? All right, all these types of things I have to think about. Or am I just putting fills in, tasty little licks in between the vocal lines? All right, chart your part, write out your notes, think about how you're going to approach the tune. Now, if you're a guitar player, bass player, it's obvious what you're going to be playing. But as a horn player, we have some more options, but also a little bit more confusion too, because you have to think, you have to think to yourself, okay, is this going to work? Is this what the band leader wants too? So we do have a little bit more flexibility, but you also have to be flexible in terms of, if the band leader says, no, I don't want you to do fills, or no, I don't want you to do that, do this instead, you got to be prepared for that too, okay? Now, here's the problem also with charting your part. It's something that you could run against. You may have difficulty figuring out what some of the chords are. The recording may be muddy. It just may not be clear. So there's a couple of resources that I know a lot of rhythm section players use to help them get the chords when they have to learn tunes quick especially. And I'm looking on my list here. It's echords.com, chords.com, and I'll put these links in the show notes. This one, and also tabs.ultimate-guitar.com. That one's more popular. Now these websites list, if you type out the song, it will list out the lyrics and the chords that go with it. But what's really cool, I haven't visited these sites until I did my research for this presentation here. Now what those sites are doing is they have a transpose button at the bottom. So, if the singer changes the key, just click the transposition button. I noticed the transposition button was a little easier to use on the eChords site as compared to the Ultimate Guitar tabs one, the tabs.ultimate-guitar. So just keep that in mind. But you know what a good benefit of that is too? If you don't read everything in concert pitch on your horn, you could have those lead sheets transposed to the key that you want. So that's just something to keep in mind, a little extra bonus tip for you as you're figuring out your parts. Of course, it's always helpful to know the background chords, especially when there's no horn parts. You've got to figure out what's going to work. Now, another tip also, and this is more for the band leaders more than anybody else, but it is also good for band personnel, and it's this. What makes a really good performance are the beginnings and the endings. They have to be tight. If they're not tight, well, number one, you're going to lose the audience in the beginning, and number two, they're just not going to be interested at the end. You've just lost them. You may have had a really good performance and then it ended like in a confusing way. Well, it leaves the audience confused. So that's what the rehearsals are really for. Okay, they're for figuring out, guys, how do we want to start this? Do we want this as part of a medley? Are we connecting these songs together? Guys, how do we want to end this? Do we want to end it, with a definite stop? Or do we want to medley it, bring it to another song? Or do we want to do a fade out? That's the key difference. When bands approach rehearsals as practices, and people are figuring out their parts at the rehearsal, number one, time is wasted, it's frustrating, and you don't really learn the tunes. You're not really getting deeper into the tunes, and it's not going to be as polished of a performance. So these are just some basic tips for band members, especially, so that when you go to rehearsal, you're going to be super prepared. You're going to be the person that's going to keep getting called to sub or to play in particular bands because you did your homework. And for band leaders, this is going to make you look good in front of the band members, and it's going to keep people motivated to stay in your band. You know, the thing is this, you're building a foundation. If you go to rehearsal without any kind of charts or any kind of foundation, it's going to be a hot mess. And if you lead a rehearsal where you don't have the foundation set, you're not sure about how you want to end things, or you're not running the rehearsal, it's kind of running by itself, it's going to be another hot mess. And just like having a solid foundation with your tone, where you want to sound really good, so you're not thinking about, whether the notes are going to come out or not, you want to have that solid foundation when you're running a rehearsal. Okay, so that is your tips for the day. Now, if you do want to bring your playing up to the next level, click on the link below, and I'm going to ask you some questions, learn a little bit about you, and then you're going to get a free video lesson to bring your playing up to the next level. Thanks for joining me. Take care. Have a great day.